For decades, military strategists and geopolitical experts have scrutinized one specific stretch of water on the world map. It is not the deserts of the Middle East, and it is not the frozen front lines of Eastern Europe. It is a narrow body of water, roughly 100 miles wide, known as the Taiwan Strait. To the casual observer, it appears to be just another shipping lane. But beneath the surface, and in the skies above, this is arguably the most heavily monitored and militarized flashpoint in the modern era. It is the fault line where two superpowers, the United States and China, are pushing against each other. Given the critical role both countries play in the modern economy and their proximity to other major players like Japan, South Korea, and Singapore, a conflict over Taiwan would have massive consequences. To put it bluntly, this scenario is widely regarded as one of the most dangerous potential triggers for a great power war. But the risk does not stop there. As military planners often note, starting a conflict is far easier than ending one. That reality drives the entire strategy of the United States regarding Taiwan today. It is a strategy of deterrence. The goal is not necessarily to fight a war, but to convince the People's Republic of China that the cost of starting one is simply too high. The objective is to keep Beijing from calculating that a forceful takeover is a viable option. However, as we move deeper into the latter half of the 2020s, difficult questions remain. Will these deterrence strategies actually work? The United States and Taiwan are betting heavily on the idea that they can maintain the status quo. But if China decides that the time for patience is over, how does the West respond? And more importantly, how do global powers prevent a regional invasion from spiraling into a catastrophe? To understand the trajectory of this crisis, we must look at how the status quo has been systematically dismantled. For over 60 years, stability in the Taiwan Strait relied on an unspoken rule. It was a maritime boundary known as the Davis Median Line. Established in 1954, this line ran down the middle of the strait, separating the Chinese mainland from the island of Taiwan. For decades, both sides largely respected it. It served as a psychological and military buffer. From 1954 until 2020, there were only a handful of acknowledged military crossings across that line. It was stable. It was predictable. But today, that line effectively no longer exists. Starting in late 2020 and accelerating through 2024 and 2025, China has eroded that boundary through sheer volume of force. They have engaged in a tactic known as gray zone warfare. This involves using military and paramilitary forces to exhaust Taiwan without crossing the threshold of declared war. The numbers tell a stark story. According to data from Taiwan's Ministry of National Defense, in 2024 alone, the island detected 5,105 incursions by Chinese aircraft into its air defense identification zone. That averages out to nearly 14 security violations every single day. Day after day, Taiwanese pilots must scramble their jets, burning fuel, stressing airframes, and exhausting their personnel. This is a war of attrition, designed to degrade Taiwan's readiness before a conflict even begins. China has repeatedly signaled that it reserves the option of using force to achieve reunification. Their goal is national rejuvenation, and for the Chinese Communist Party, that mission remains incomplete as long as Taiwan remains a self-governing entity separate from the mainland. Despite the massive modernization of its military, becoming the third strongest army in the world, and boasting the largest navy by hull count, China has historically exercised caution regarding a full-scale confrontation. But the patterns are changing. We are no longer seeing just patrols, we are seeing complex rehearsals. These exercises have evolved significantly. They are multi-branch operations, simulating a complete encirclement of the island. In May 2024, the Chinese military conducted the Joint Sword 2024 drills. These operations focused on precision strikes, missile tests, and seizing control of the battlefield information space. Then came December of this year. Observers witnessed a massive, unannounced drill, considered the largest in nearly 3 decades. Approximately 60 naval ships and 30 Coast Guard units operated in the waters around Taiwan, simulating blockades and interdiction of foreign vessels. But the signal that triggered serious concern inside U.S. defense circles occurred in April 2025. In a significant show of force involving 135 aircraft, Beijing established a bilateral maritime blockade radius of 253 miles around Taiwan. This specific distance is crucial. It pushes the Chinese operational zone far beyond the island's coast, deep into the Pacific Ocean. It sends a message to the United States. The area of denial is expanding. American intelligence experts and military analysts have long discussed the 2027 deadline. This year marks the 100th anniversary of the founding of the People's Liberation Army. Intelligence assessments suggest that President Xi Jinping has ordered his military to be capable of a successful invasion by this date. It does not guarantee an invasion will occur in 2027, but it indicates a desire to have the military capability to do so if ordered. However, possessing the capability to invade and executing a successful landing are two very different challenges. An amphibious invasion of Taiwan would be one of the most complex military operations ever attempted. Geography is Taiwan's most formidable defender. The Taiwan Strait is known for its rough waters. For much of the year, monsoons and high winds make a crossing hazardous for small landing craft. There are limited windows, primarily in late spring and early autumn, where the weather is calm enough for a massive fleet to cross. Even if the Chinese Navy crosses the strait, they face the mud flats. Taiwan's western coast is lined with shallow waters and mud, which makes it incredibly difficult for heavy tanks and equipment to land efficiently. Furthermore, there are only a limited number of beaches on the entire island suitable for a large-scale landing, and the Taiwanese military has spent decades fortifying them. Taiwan has implemented what is known as the hedgehog strategy. The concept is straightforward. You do not need to defeat the opposing military outright. You need to make the invasion so costly that the adversary reconsiders. This strategy relies on asymmetrical warfare. Instead of relying solely on expensive fighter jets that can be targeted on the runway, Taiwan is investing in mobile, survivable systems. We are talking about manpads, portable anti-air missiles, mobile anti-ship launchers, HIMARS systems, and fleets of drones. The goal is to turn the literal crossing of the strait into a zone of denial, degrading the fleet before it establishes a beachhead. Because a direct invasion carries such high risks, the consensus among many analysts is shifting. China may not start with a kinetic assault. They may start with a squeeze. This is the Lian-Heffenkong strategy, the joint blockade. The objective here isn't to occupy land immediately. It is to cut off the lifelines. Taiwan is an island economy with a critical vulnerability. It has almost no natural resources of its own. Taiwan imports roughly 97% of its energy and 70% of its food. The most concerning logistical reality for Taipei is this. Without regular tanker shipments, Taiwan possesses less than 2 weeks of natural gas reserves under normal conditions. If China can interdict shipping lanes for that duration, the island's power grid faces collapse. Factories shut down. Determining how long society can function under those conditions is a calculation Beijing is undoubtedly making. From China's perspective, a blockade offers strategic advantages. They could frame it not as a war, but as a quarantine or a customs enforcement operation, claiming they are simply inspecting ships for contraband. This places the United States in a diplomatic and military bind. If China isn't firing missiles, does the U.S. Navy open fire on Chinese Coast Guard ships to break the blockade? Initiating combat could paint the U.S. as the aggressor. This non-kinetic approach is designed to strangle Taiwan's economy and force political concessions without a full-scale landing. Why does this specific island command such attention from Western powers? Beyond the democratic values, there is a hard economic reality involving a component smaller than a fingernail, the semiconductor. Taiwan is home to TSMC, the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company. This single island produces the vast majority of the world's most advanced logic chips. These are not just components for consumer electronics. These are the processors inside modern smartphones, the control systems for automobiles, the servers that power the global internet, and the guidance systems for advanced military hardware. If China invades or blockades Taiwan, the so-called Silicon Shield is compromised. Some economic models suggest that a disruption of this magnitude could result in global losses measured in the tens of trillions of dollars over time. It would likely dwarf the economic impact of recent financial crises. Factories in Europe would stall. Data centers in North America would face critical supply shortages. The modern digital economy relies heavily on Taiwanese silicon. This economic reality makes the stability of the Taiwan Strait a matter of national security for the entire industrialized world. Recognizing this multifaceted threat, the U.S. strategy has evolved. It rests on two pillars: denial and punishment. Denial means physically impeding a takeover. For decades, this relied on carrier strike groups. However, recognizing the threat of China's anti-access and area denial missiles, the U.S. is adapting. The Pentagon is shifting focus toward attritable systems, cheaper autonomous platforms that can be deployed in mass. This includes what some planners have informally referred to as the hellscape concept, utilizing swarms of unmanned aerial and subsurface drones to disrupt an invading fleet. The second pillar is punishment. This involves economic consequences. If China blockades Taiwan, the United States and its allies could theoretically initiate a counter-blockade. China is a major export economy. It requires open sea lanes to sell goods and, crucially, to import oil. In the event of a conflict, the U.S. Navy retains significant control over distant maritime choke points. Estimates suggest a full conflict could cause a sharp contraction in China's GDP. Beijing is aware of this vulnerability. This drives their aggressive expansion of nuclear power and renewable energy sources, an effort to build energy resilience against potential external blockades. We are witnessing a high-stakes geopolitical balancing act. The challenge for Washington is finding the precise calibration of deterrence. The signals sent to Beijing must be credible enough to discourage aggression, yet measured enough to avoid triggering an accidental escalation. If the U.S. pushes too aggressively, China may feel backed into a corner. If the U.S. shows hesitation, it may be interpreted as a lack of resolve. The ultimate goal of this strategy is stability, to ensure that the status quo remains the most attractive option for all parties involved. But as military exercises grow in scale and the window to 2027 narrows, the margin for error shrinks. One miscalculation, one misinterpreted signal, or one collision in the Taiwan Strait could alter the global order. This is a situation that demands constant, vigilant monitoring. So, if you've made it this far, please subscribe to the Military Media YT. Thank you.